Present.
Mike Ganchert,
Here.
Peggy Cruz,
Present.
Tammy Newberry,
I'm here.
Chuck Phillipson,
Here.
Roger Trutman,
Here.
Lori Wertz.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone's here. I look for the approval of the agenda.
Mike Gansert, so moved.
Tammy Newberry, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, item 3, public appearances, citizens' comments. No debate will occur on the board on items introduced by citizens. Items will not be acted upon at this meeting, but will be referred to the proper staff or committee if action is required. Please keep comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone out there who'd like to speak? Hearing none, I move to look for the approval of the consent agenda.
Gansert, Mike, I would move for approval of consent agenda items A and B.
I'm Michael Bell, will second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, presentation of 2019 audit report by Dave Maddox from Clifton Larson. Dave, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Hear you fine.
Okay. Sounds good. So you should have a copy of the annual financial report for the village. It is a bound document in a spiral binding, and then also management communications, which should be a staple document. So I will start on the annual financial report, which is the bound document. This represents the financial statements for the as of and for the year ended December 31st, 2019. If we turn to page 1 of the report, page 1, 2, and 3 is what we call the independent auditor's report. So really, this is our report to the village board. The first paragraph talks about the financial statements that are contained in this document. The second paragraph talks about these financial statements come from the village's financial records. So when we're performing an audit, we are using the same records in which you get your financial information from the village management. As part of our audit, our responsibilities are to review the information and provide an opinion on the accuracy of the information in relationship to accounting policies. So that is really stated on the bottom of page 1. It's a heading called opinions, and we indicate in our opinion the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. We call that a unmodified opinion. Means we would make no modifications to the report you have in front of you. Then if you turn to page 2, page 2 just goes through, in addition to the basic financial statements, there's a number of additional informations that is contained in this document, primarily required supplemental information and other information that is and also comparative information for the 2018 financial statement. So in addition to 2019, there's additional comparative information for you. And then the other on page 3 talks about we perform the audit in accordance with government auditing standards. If we turn to page 4, I would encourage the village board to review pages 4 through page 10. This is kind of a high-level synopsis of what happened in 2019 and how it compares to the prior year. So it kind of goes through some of the key changes in your financial results and is kind of summarized at a high level just to kind of give you a feel for what is the significant changes that occurred. So like I said, it's well done. It really hits some of the highlights of what happened in 2019. In certain instances, there are comparative numbers to the prior year, but it just gives you a high level what happened going forward. If we turn to page 11 of the report, this is your government-wide financial statement. So pages 11, 12, and 13 are your government-wide financial statements. What that really represents is it is the key financial information on a full accrual basis. So you don't see funds like the general fund. What you see is governmental activities, which is your general, your TIF districts, your capital project funds, your library, and then the business type is really your enterprise fund operation. So your water, your sewer, your electric, etc. So it's broken down. But what's important to really reflect here is a couple things. Number one, total assets. So the village is managing about $35 million of assets. Now, some of those assets are what we call capital assets, meaning the roads, the infrastructure, the meters, the hydrants, etc., that are really providing services to the residents of the village. The other components are other assets that are liquid in nature, like cash, etc. So nothing too unusual. If you would look and see, okay, 2019 is 35 million, 2018 is 35.6. There was a change in some of the information that's reported, and so you can see as you look at it, the information related to your tax collections. You can see property taxes and cash are down. That's because the village did move in anticipation of GASB Statement 84, did move that activity into an agency fund. So overall, you can see that your assets are up in the current year, and we'll kind of walk through some of the significant changes there. Liabilities are down. Once again, primary difference is that due to other governments, that got moved into an agency fund effective for the implementation of GASB 84 in the next year. So overall, your long-term obligations did go up as the village did issue some debt in 2019. But the key thing is when you look at it, your net position, that's the bottom the bottom four numbers. But the subtotal indicates that your net position or net ownership of your assets went from about 17.7 million to about 18.7. So a growth of a little over $1 million in your net position, which means that more of your assets are owned, funded through either property taxes, tax increments, or charges for services in 2019. If you turn to pages 12 and 13, you can see we saw about $1 million increase. About 700,000 of that increase was in governmental activities, and about 300,000 was in business type. And those really reflect the financial statements that you're going to see coming up. So then starting on page 14, page 14 is your governmental funds. So here what we're looking at really is your fund balance. We're looking at current year activities, and we do summarize it. So we're going to kind of skip into the management letter when we get talk management communication. So I'm not going to go through line by line, but if we turn to page 20 of this report, page 20 is important. Your most significant fund is really your general fund. So page 20 through page 22 kind of goes at a high level what happened in your general fund. So if you kind of look at each individual line item, and if you turn to page 21, your total revenues, you had budgeted about 1.2 million of revenues. You actually received about 1,343,000. Some of the significant changes is some additional revenues, going into so it's about 115,000 more than you budgeted. Some of that is interest income's a little higher. Donations are also up, and you can see line by line. So the village does a very good job of budgeting. So if you go through each line item, you don't see a lot of significant variations in your revenue budget. Yeah, just a couple larger ones with respect to interest. Then if we look at expenditures, so this is really what the village department heads and the departments control within the general fund. So Once again, the budget, final budget was about $1,446,000. Actual expenditures for the village in the current year in the general fund were $1,424,358. So when you look at that, it really shows, you know, if you kind of look line by line, how the village does manage, and the budget came in very close to the actual expenditures overall. Now, there's certain lines that are over a little bit, you know, like the police department's over a little bit, or you get some additional legal costs, etc. But overall, when you look at the bottom line, the village did a very nice job of keeping the expenditures within the authorized budgets in an overall scenario. Then if you look at the bottom, financing sources and uses, you can see pretty much equals to the budget. So the result of all the activities is you did budget to decrease your fund balance based on the positive revenue and the nice job of managing expenditures. You actually came in with an $87,000 surplus in the general fund, leaving you with about $1,077,000. So, any questions on that?
Yeah, quick question here. I just noticed that under expenditures, the ambulance, the budgeted for it is the exact same as the actual. So did we not really have the budget in there, and then we just kind of filled it in based off of what it was?
I think that's a standard appropriation, because if you look at 2018, it's the same amount. So that's probably the you kind of know what the appropriation for that line item is going to be.
Okay.
And then did I hear you say something about donations? I was confused by that.
Yeah, if you look at page 21 under miscellaneous revenues, you received about 32,000 or 33,000 of donations compared to a budget of 1,000.
So I guess I was curious as to what specifically those donations were. Do we need to know that?
Lynn, you can jump in, but my guess is that it's largely the police department community fund that's used to, you know, shop with a cop, things like that. Lynn, is that correct?
That would be a part of it, I would guess. I would also guess that in 2019, we received a large donation for the diving board.
Okay, that makes sense. Now I'm understanding.
And without going through that account in detail, I can't really break down specifically what each one is, but I do know that that was probably 16,000 of it.
Okay. I understand what it's about then. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay. Then the next statement is really your proprietary funds, and once again, we have that documented in our management communications. So unless anyone has any questions, why don't we go to the management communications document, which is the staple document. So this is the staple document is really our communication to the village board and the village management of information that we observed during the audit. It kind of summarizes some communications that we are required to communicate to the village board to talk about how the audit went from a perspective. So if we turn to page one indicates that from a perspective of accounting policies, there was one that was adopted related to disclosures related to debt. So there's some additional, didn't affect the ending balances or didn't affect any of the numbers reported, but some additional disclosures related to that. Then if we go to estimates, understand that the financial statements that you have in front of you do contain some estimates. So just the actuarial analysis prepared for the Wisconsin retirement system, your share of that is an estimate of ultimately what your portion of that retirement system is. So also how long assets are going to last, how long a road's going to last, how long a hydrant's going to last. Clearly, you know, the village has to establish an estimated life. an actual asset might last longer or less than that life. But we review the estimates of all the village estimates and believe they're reasonable, appropriate, and consistent with accounting for governments in Wisconsin. So there's nothing unusual in your estimates. It's just a disclosure that says, you know, not every number is without some degree of estimation. Then if we turn to page 2 kind of walks around the disclosures, walks around how the audit went, kind of talks about significant areas or consultations, which there were none. So if you go through page 2 and the first 3/4 of the page, if you read all those, you would understand that we had no difficulties in completing the audit. The staff of the village were prepared, and the audit went well. Now, we did have one item that required us to wait until the application of a new standard by GASB was done. So that was completed, and so we had the audit done. We're just waiting for GASB to delay some of the implementation of a new standard. So that was done and the report was issued. But like I said, the audit and the perspective of how the village staff worked with the audit, we can say that it went very well from our team's perspective, and we certainly appreciate all the support we received from the staff of the village. Then on the bottom of the page, we do have 2 items that we consider audit findings or issues, and these are consistent with what you've seen in the past. The first one just relates to segregation of duties. Just understanding that the size of the village does mean that certain employees might perform duties that you would, in a perfect world, like to segregate. Why that, you know, and sometimes we get, why is that in year after year? It's just to kind of remind management and the board in your role of reviewing what you receive from management. So part of what we rely on as a compensating controls is board oversight and review of the information you've received as a board. The next one is really the fact that we're preparing the financial report. The document in the bound financial report is the village's. Our role is to prepare it or assist in that preparation. And that's a very common, both of these are very common in small governments, but we are required to report that to you. And then if you turn to page 3, it just talks about there's other information. So if you go through the first 3 pages, you'll realize that the audit went very well. We certainly appreciate everyone that was at the village in completing the audit. Then if we turn to page 4 and page 5, page 4 and 5 really focus on your governmental funds. And we saw that in the general fund. We talked about the increase in your general fund. You can see when you're looking at the general fund, you did assign and commit some funds of that general fund, and your unassigned remained fairly constant. So overall, once again, your general fund did increase about 87,000, and that you're certainly in a good shape. So when we look at your unassigned, page 5 has some statistics, but what we look at is your unassigned fund balance as a percentage of the anticipated expenditures. So currently you are at about 67%. So that is a pretty strong position. Some of that is due to some of the cash flows, property tax equivalent is received over time. In addition to that, part of the unassigned, you do set aside about $361,000 for operating reserves and working capital, just to kind of cash flow your operations. But if you look at your fund balance in the general fund, certainly continues to be in a strong position. Then if you look at the rest of the funds, you'll notice that not a lot of variation from last year to this year. You know, from a perspective, when you look at the 2 values, there's debt service is really reserved for long-term debt. Your special revenue funds, you do have some additional library funds, and then your capital projects. Those are really over time. It's really the component of, you know, capital projects, tax increment districts, etc. So nothing really unusual in any of those areas. Okay. Then, like I said, page 5 just has some statistics. It talks about the TIF districts. You do have 2 tax increment districts at the present time. One of them, district number 3, has unreimbursed project costs of about $677,000. And then district 4 has unreimbursed project costs of about $256,000. So, excuse me, these are costs that you're going to recover over time going forward. Any questions on the governmental fund? So I guess if I step back, continue to be in a strong position from a governmental fund balance. I mean, it doesn't make adopting an annual budget any easier, but from a stability of your fund position, you continue to be in a strong balance sheet approach. So any questions on that? Okay, then if we turn to page 6, here we focus a little bit on not necessarily the fund balance, but we focus on the revenues and expenses and kind of the change in your net position. So when you switch to your proprietary funds, because they're not funded by a tax levy or intergovernmental aids, but they're really funded by charges for services that need to manage to be, recover your cost. You really see, we focus on the income statement here. So if you look at wastewater utility, you can see that overall operating income decreased a little bit as your operating cost increased. Non-operating revenues really consist of interest income and interest. So you did have a change in net position of about 68,000 compared to about 71. So from a perspective of looking at your financial position, you can kind of see that both years are very comparable. Then we, at the bottom of page, bottom of page 6, we kind of show what was the change in your cash. So your change in cash went up from $31,408 in the current year. So positive cash flow in the current year. Then if we turn to page 7, the stormwater utility is non-regulated, just like the sewer. Here you do charge a charge for service. You can see when you look at your 2 years, very comparable results. Main change here is operating expenses were down slightly from 2018. As a result, your change in net position did increase to $24,000, and the stormwater utility has a cash balance of about $162,000. Then on the bottom of page 7 is your electric utility. Now, the electric utility is a regulated utility. What that means is you are regulated by the Public Service Commission when you establish your rates. So you can see your operating charges and operating revenues stayed almost flat, which is very consistent. Power costs were down a little bit in 2019 in comparison to the prior year. So you can see when you look at operating expenses and your operating revenues stayed fairly constant. So in an electric utility, your charges are really geared a lot to what happens in the power, purchase power cost. And so overall, you can see your operating income remain fairly constant. Then if you look at analysis on the bottom, so operating income does adjust for various different functionalities and pilot payments. And then if you turn to page 8 shows that your rate of return was 5.93% compared to 4.22. So because of the slightly increased in revenues, you did have a positive rate of return in 2019. So rate of return is really a function of your operations, but it's also a function of all the investment you have in property, plant, and equipment within the electric utility. So both factor into your rate of return. Then the water utility on page 8 really goes through and shows that your revenues were about $601,000. Operating expenses stayed flat or down a little bit. And then you can see on the bottom of page 8, your rate of return, because the water also is regulated, came in at 5.63%. So compared to about 4.3. So once again, factor of your investment in capital and also factor of your operating results. Any questions on any of your utility operations?
Nope.
Okay, then on page 9, there is a new accounting standard related to leases, and it kind of walks through the fact of some of the accounting for lease obligations in the future, and that will have an impact in your 2022 fiscal report. So just something to look out for into the future. Plus GASB 84, like you indicated, the village did implement an agency fund, and so 84 will be effective next year, and we'll have slightly different financial statements for your agency fund. It'll be called a custodial fund, but really won't change your operations going forward. So with that, we did not have any other comments or observations as part of the audit, which means that we believe the village continues to maintain a strong control structure and continues to account for things properly in the current year. And with that, I'll entertain any questions anyone may have.
I wasn't sure what you meant at the end by the lease. You were saying that we're changing.
Yeah, there's new standards, and leasing probably isn't as impactful for governments, but in the private industry, FASB has been really looking at leases all since Enron. So FASB came up with some new lease standards, and GASB, which sets accounting for governments, followed their suit. So ultimately, what's going to happen in the future is if you do any leasing, whether it's equipment or buildings, there will be an adjustment to your balance sheet to recognize that you do have the ability to use the asset going forward over a period of time. So it really doesn't change the cash out the door. What it does change is how that's presented. And the main reason it's being done is, if you followed Enron, and it's been a long time, so that's how long and how controversial lease accounting has been. But one of the things that Enron had is they had a whole bunch of operating leases that were complex, and no one really understood how much leverage and future payments they had to make. So it's just trying to recognize in financial statements the future value of lease payments, both operating and capital. Probably won't have a significant impact on the village, but we've been surprised when we didn't think it had an impact, and then as certain agreements were reviewed, they're considered leases and do have an impact. So it's a ways out there, but it was scheduled to be effective for next year, but GASB, like I indicated, delayed some of the standards because of COVID, and that's one that they pushed back just because basically to help governments and give them some additional time to comply, because this one could impact or could take a little bit to comply with. But for your operations, it's not going to have a significant impact. But like I said, we just kind of communicated just to make sure we're prepared for it.
Right. Drake, I wasn't aware that we had a lot of things leased. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Struggle to name any.
We do not.
Okay.
Yep. But I guess it's just as we've had governments that start leasing certain assets, equipment. So it's more it isn't today, but it's kind of when you have to implement it, what you might have out in leases.
Sure.
And
I understand. I'm sorry, Lynn, go ahead.
We have leased equipment in the past.
Okay.
Okay, does anybody have any more questions of Dave? I guess hearing none, David, thank you. Excellent job on the report again, and I'm glad to hear that the village is doing so well. So I guess
Sounds
we'll
good.
hear from you next year.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you,
You're
Dave.
welcome, Dave.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Dave.
Bye. Okay, item 6, new board business. Discussion consideration R20-16 library exemption from paying county library tax for 2021. This is something we do annually. And I don't quite understand it, to be very honest.
So as Roger said, it's an annual approval. It exempts the village from the payment of any county library tax. The village is exempt as it levies, we levy a tax on behalf of the library, a library tax sufficient to satisfy the Wisconsin statutes. So this exempts the village from paying any county levied library taxes.
I'll make a motion that we go forward with the exemption.
Approve resolution 20-16.
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 20-16.
Hang on.
This is
Isn't that resolution 20-15?
What was that, Mike?
I have it in my packet as resolution 20-15.
Lynn, can you tell me which one's the typo?
I have it everywhere as 16. I guess without having the book in front of me, I cannot tell you that.
Okay, well, the motion, the way it is, it's fine with me. I don't have it. As a matter of fact, I would approve it or second it.
I'll
Okay.
check the number.
Okay, I've got 16 on both my sheets, but. Okay, we have motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, President's Report. Consideration, discussion, addition of committee chairperson report to board agenda. Drake?
Sure. Trustee Phillipson requested this item be included on the agenda for discussion. The only input staff has on this is if the board would like to add a monthly report from the committee chairs to the board agenda, staff recommends placing it on the agenda scheduled for the third Tuesday of the month, as committee meetings typically occur the week prior. And then I'll turn it over to Chuck if he would like to add anything.
Yeah, thank you. The only reason I brought this up is because I've served on numerous boards, committees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I've never been on a board that didn't have a board that had committees that didn't have regular committee reports. I'm not sure why this was dropped at the Village of New Glarus. I know previously, in previous years, we always had a standing agenda item of committee reports. And whatever the reason, I just feel it'd be beneficial to everyone if there was a verbal committee report. And I think the second meeting of the month is certainly appropriate, because that would cover the time frame of the committee reports. It's not to say that this has to be a lengthy report. It's not to say that there even has to be a report if no meaningful action was taken, but I think it should be on a standing place on every at least once a month agenda, so that I realize that there are minutes presented, but we can't question minutes. Minutes are, by their own definition, are just basically actions taken. And I think there are times when I like to question what happened. And I think there are times when committee people would like to voice their opinion or at least their actions of what might have happened. I know that in the past couple of years, there have been a lot of things that have just been brought up at the board meeting level that minutes didn't totally cover, and I wasn't aware of reasonings or able to question them. So anyway, I'm asking that. In fact, I'm gonna just move that we include a standing item agenda of committee reports on the second meeting of the month.
I think that's an amazing idea, and I'm going to second that.
So Chuck, you're just asking for a verbal report?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Quite simple.
So
It's
the
just,
process would be just a couple of words about what's going on in each one of the committees that we serve on, that there's no one else from the board. Is that what you're saying? Just a little brief summary.
I think, I'm not sure I understand your question, but yes. It would be a committee report. The standing committee chairman would
You just said that.
report on the activity of the prior committee meeting verbally.
Okay.
So, and Chuck, just to clarify, when you said standing committee, you're talking Parks and Rec and Public Works, Public Safety, correct?
Yeah, maybe I should qualify that. I don't see any reason why other committees wouldn't report, and I don't think I don't think it's a situation where you have to say, okay, somebody has to be there and make a report. It's the person reporting for the committee could say, we took no action, nothing out of the ordinary, yada, yada, yada. But I think there ought to be a place on the agenda for committee reports. So I think it could be listed as committee reports. It's as simple as that. I mean, I don't think it has to be delineated as to the actual committee, just committee reports. And it would certainly be helpful to just go down the line.
Yep.
with a subheading listing each committee. I don't think that would be a problem, but that doesn't mean that some committees don't have any action. So yeah, you want to clarify? You want me to clarify that motion, or how do you?
I get it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm thinking here. It says committee chairperson reports.
Well, I mean,
So,
obviously,
let's say that CDA meets at the end of the month, then the second meeting of the following month, you would want the chairperson to make some kind of a report, what the CDA approved or disapproved or whatever they did at their meeting?
yes. If they had a meeting.
it's just a good way of keeping everyone on the board on the same page of what's been going on in each of the subcommittees. And it's just presenting a summary of, hey, we met on this, and this is what the actions we created and what we did, or this, we didn't talk about this, you know, it just a summary of what happened during each meeting. And it's just keeping everyone in the loop on what's going on.
So let's say the CDA meets and are they to be instructed to be present at the meeting on the second Tuesday to give this report? I guess
Yes,
is what,
yes.
so that's gonna be what, up to Drake to make sure that they are in attendance then, correct?
Well,
Based
it's
on how?
certainly would be up to him to notify them that they would be on the agenda. I don't think he has the police authority to make sure they're there, but yes.
Do you really need it to be a chairperson report, or can it just be a member report? So for example, are you
Well,
thinking?
obviously the chair would be the person responsible, but if a member, if the chair couldn't make it, if the chair didn't want to be there, they could appoint someone else to make the report. I don't think
Well,
that's
so for
something.
example, are you thinking I would report back on the library and the fire department? Because I'm not the chair of either one of those committees, but I'm the board representative on those.
Right. Well, then I think I think that would be appropriate, that if the fire district, library board, you're the liaison. So, I did not, by the way, mean to specify chairperson when I initially discussed this. So yeah, I think, you know, if a committee report came up and agenda item, committee report, library board, yeah, I think Tammy Newberry would be appropriate as the liaison. I think Tammy Newberry would be appropriate as the representative on the fire board. I think that's just, I don't think this is rocket science. I think we could strike the chairperson. And I don't think I put that in my motion anyway. Just committee report.
I mean, I have no problem doing that. I can give you a brief little summary of what.
Right, I'm sure that's true. So I just think committee report as an agenda item and listing the various committees, and there may not be any report, there may be no business by that committee, whatever. If there is, there would be a report given. It's not rocket science. I don't know of any other board or commission committee that doesn't do this. So let's work it out. Let's work out the protocol. But I am just moving that committee reports be given on a monthly basis, and as per Drake's information, probably at the second meeting of the month.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have one more thing, and Lynn, I'll let you explain this about Mr. Eisenman, please.
Oh, sure. I received a call today from Kathleen Eisenman. I don't know how many of you remember her husband, Mark. Mark Eisenman was a trustee in the village in the late 90s, and on the passing of Richard Schmid, during his presidency, Mark Eisenman stepped into the village president role. He was instrumental in getting an administrator and moving us forward. He passed away yesterday, and Kathleen Eisenman called today to let us know that his obituary will show up in next week's paper, I believe. But she just wanted everyone to know about it and how much he appreciated his opportunity to work on the village board and as village president, and how proud he was of that.
Okay, Lynn, thank you very much. I, for one, did not know Mr. Eisenman. Chuck, you probably did?
No.
Oh, you did not either? Okay, okay. I figured if anybody that's sitting on the board right now would know him, it would have been you, so. But that was just a little thing that Lynn wanted to make known, so. Is there any further business? Hearing none, we are adjourned. What?
I just wanted to say, what would be traditional, or is there a tradition of us doing any kind of recognition for that as a board?
I would be happy to send a card if you would want me to send a card.
I think some acknowledgement should be done for that, yes.
If the card is something you're interested in, I would be happy to take care of that.
I think that would be nice, thank you.
Is it something that the current board should sign as well as a matter of appreciation? Because Kathleen did talk to you guys in regards to saying appreciation to current board. Should we all sign this before we send it off?
That's up to you. I can get a card tomorrow at Brenda's, and if you want to stop in and sign it, I can then mail it off on Friday. So anybody that would be interested in signing, if you stop by our office, you know, sometime afternoon tomorrow and before Friday, I'll get it mailed up. Does that work?
That does, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, is there any further business? Hearing none,